Welcome to Pensari Basketball. My name is Robert, and today we're talking about 5 teams and 5 more teams that I think are being underrated by NBA analysts. Teams get underrated for a plethora of reasons. Maybe they had a really bad end to the previous year. Maybe there's a young star who's about to take a big step up that we're not projecting. Maybe there's an aging star who is showing some signs of decline going into last year, but maybe they had a really good offseason, they're healthy, and they're ready to go coming into this season. I'm not saying that these teams are going to make the playoffs, the play-in, or they're going to be championship contenders. I just think they're going to be a little bit better than we're giving them credit for. I want to remind you, at this time last year, it was absolutely absurd if you didn't think that the Lakers and the Nets were going to be in the NBA Finals. And one of those teams didn't make the playoffs and the other one was swept in the first round. So we get things wrong all the time. I'm sure that some of these teams are actually going to be god awful. I want to say thank you to all of you for getting us to 3,000 subscribers. Our last Scottie Barnes video, which is doing really well, got us past the 3,000 subscriber mark. Huge milestone for this channel. If you are new around here, my name is Robert. Grab your coffee, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. It does help the channel out a lot, and let's get to it. So first, I'm going to start with 5 honorable mentions. First, I'm going to start with the Atlanta Hawks. I don't think that people are properly assessing just how good Dejounte Murray is. I think Onyeka Okongwu is amazing. I think DeAndre Hunter is really good. I think people are sort of forgetting just how well we were talking about Trae Young a couple years ago. Obviously, the Hawks didn't have a great season last year. They were a little bit disappointing, and when teams disappoint, we tend to underrate them. So I think they could be a lot better going into this season. Another team that I'm very surprised to see not being talked about in the playoffs is the Chicago Bulls. I mean, look, I know Lonzo Ball is a really big catalyst for that team, and Nikola Vucevic has not been great, but man, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Patrick Williams, Ayo Dosunmu, man, there's like 9 guys on the team that are so good. And I just really think that they're a well-coached team. I think that DeMar DeRozan really holds that team accountable. I really don't think, even though as he's approaching his, mid-30s, I still think he's got a couple of really good years left in him. I'm not saying that they're going to be championship contenders or that they ever were. Last year, they really beat up on a lot of really bad teams. But look, with half the league tanking starting in probably December, they're going to beat up on a lot of really bad teams again this year in the East and in the West, and I just don't see how a team with that much talent is going to outright miss the playoffs, even in a very stacked Eastern Conference. Another team that I think is sort of being slept on is the Sacramento Kings, and probably for some of the same reasons. Look, I'm not huge on Domantas Sabonis or De'Aaron Fox. I don't think either one of them is a top 25 player. Please don't kill me, Kings Nation. But I do believe this is a team that has a lot of depth. I think that there's like 9 or 10 guys on that team. Like Rashawn Holmes would pretty much play for every single team in the league. I think Keegan Murray is a really good pick. I think Harrison Barnes is a serviceable 3rd or 4th option at this point in his career. Yeah, I think De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis showed some signs last year that they could really figure it out and play off of each other. So I don't see why that team, especially given how desperate they are to make the playoffs, given how many teams around them are probably going to be tanking, I'd be very surprised to see that team not sniffing the play-in. Another team that I think is probably being slept on, the Minnesota Timberwolves, man. Like, look, I think Karl Anthony Towns is a top 20 player. I think Rudy Gobert is a top 20 player, and I think Anthony Edwards is probably going to enter the conversation as a top 15 player. Now, how can a team with 3 of the top 20 players in the NBA be so likely to miss the playoffs or be in the play-in? I don't see it. Now, I understand people don't like Rudy Gobert. People like to clown on him for the playoffs and all that stuff. But man, this guy single-handedly anchored that Utah Jazz defense. Any team that was going to trade for him was pretty much going to be up 10 wins this season, in my opinion. And unless he's ready to take a major step back as a defender and just as a player in general, and I know that he's approaching, the wrong side of 30 here, so it's possible that he could just fall off a cliff. But the Rudy Gobert that we had last year, honestly, single-handedly boosts your defense by 10 spots. I think he could easily make this a 50-plus win team. Another team that I think is being a little bit slept on is the Detroit Pistons. I can't tell you how many times I've seen the Detroit Pistons expected to finish 15th, 14th, or 13th in the East. Man, Cade Cunningham is not letting this team finish in the bottom 3 in the East, especially with all the teams that are in the East that are going to be outright tanking. And I don't think Dwayne Casey has tanking in his DNA. And Saddiq Bey, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, there's a lot of young talent on this team that absolutely needs to win. And I think Marvin Bagley could probably have a turnaround year. I know that there's a lot of people who don't believe in Marvin Bagley. I'm not one of them. I think he has a lot of talent, and I think he's found a second wind in Detroit. So look, with the addition of Bogdanovich, I think this could be a sneaky play-in team. And that's definitely not where most people are on that team right now. So those are my honorable mentions. Now let's get to the teams that I think are being slept on by the general NBA. The first team, the Memphis Grizzlies. Now I understand Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to miss some time, but I just think that this is a team that has shown that they are really good at weathering the storm. Okay, they weathered a huge injury to Ja Morant last year. This is just a team that is deep. They are very well built. Yes, they have lost some really, really important bench pieces, D'Anthony Melton, Kyle Anderson, but they've also replaced those bench pieces. This is a really good scouting team. It's a really well-run team, and it's an extremely well-coached team. So I don't think that this team is about to have a fall off, and by the time Jaren Jackson Jr. comes back, I still see this team as a 50-plus win team, and I'm just surprised to see how many people have this team finishing outside the play-in, or in the play-in, or outside the playoff race. I just don't think that Ja Morant is being given full credit for just how good he is. And I think that there's a lot of young players on that team that can probably take a huge step up. I really just love that roster. Another team that I think probably for very similar reasons is being slept on is the Boston Celtics. Now, I am surprised that there are a lot of people see the Boston Celtics finishing 6th or 7th in the Eastern Conference. Are you kidding me? Did we not watch the same season last year? I understand that Robert Williams will not play until the new year, and I understand that Ime Udoka is out and that Danilo Gallinari suffered that injury in the summer, but man, Malcolm Brogdon, Marcus Smart, Al Horford, there's so much talent on this team. Jaylen Brown, like, it's an incredible depth of talent. I think Grant Williams can take a step forward, and man, if you are watching Jason Tatum, every single year this guy takes a step up, and he was first team All-NBA last year. Where do you go from first team All-NBA? I think you go to MVP candidate. I think his MVP odds are really low, and I think he could have a sneaky MVP season this year. So by the time Robert Williams comes back, I still think this team is going to be right in the top of the Eastern Conference. I think they could very easily finish 2nd or 3rd, maybe even 1st in the East. Yes, even without Ime Udoka. I am unusually high on the Boston Celtics. Jason Tatum is one of my favorite players in the NBA, so sue me. The Toronto Raptors, man. Oh my God. I think that this is another team that really just has 8 or 9 guys that can play on just about any team in the NBA. I think Otto Porter is a huge addition. One of the underrated parts of this team, and the one I haven't really talked about, is lineup versatility. I mean, you could literally have 4 guys that are either starting at a guard, forward, or center on your team. The amount of flexibility that this gives a guy like Nick Nurse, who's already a very creative and very well-respected coach in the NBA, to just screw up with other teams on a night-to-night basis, change up coverages mid-quarter, it's just not something that most teams are built to deal with on a night-to-night basis. And yes, it's a bit of a gimmick, and yes, it usually will get exposed in the playoffs when teams have more time to scout it, but man, in the regular season, it could result in like 52 to 55 wins. I wouldn't be surprised if the Raptors are finishing top 2, top 3 in the East this year. I think Scottie Barnes can take a huge step up. I think Pascal Siakam can take a step forward. OG Anunoby. There's a lot of players on this roster who are primed breakout candidates. And frankly, if there's like 20 players that I could realistically see winning most improved player, 3 or 4 of them are Toronto Raptors. So I think that this team's being slept on. The second team that I think is being slept on, and we're just working our way down in descending order, are the Denver Nuggets. The last time we saw Jamal Murray healthy, he was probably approaching top 20 player candidacy in the bubble. And granted, it was the bubble, and some people like to joke about the bubble not being anything, but I think Jamal Murray is an incredible player. And yeah, the opening night didn't look great and they got smacked, but I really think that this is a player who by mid-season is going to work himself into an amazing form. I think Michael Porter Jr. is one of the best young players in the NBA. I know that a lot of people feel that contract was extremely rich given his back history and the history of injuries that he's sustained. But when he's healthy, He is one of the most interesting and most unguardable offensive players. And when you pair that with a two-time MVP like Nikola Jokic, and you start talking about the depth on that team, the bench, the rookies that they just drafted, Peyton Watson. I'm just a huge Peyton Watson fan, by the way. Last year, Bones Highland. This is just a team that is deep. It is primed to win, and they were like in the thick of things last year without those two guys. They just got their second and third best player back, and arguably those two guys, when healthy, are top 40 players in the NBA. I think that's a lot to give an already incredible player like Nikola Jokic, who already makes these guys so much better. I think this is a team that could easily finish first in the West if they get healthy and stay healthy. And finally, the New Orleans Pelicans. Man, I am shocked to see how many times I have seen this team finishing 5th or 6th in someone's rankings. You don't understand how good Zion Williamson is because we haven't seen him in a while. I get that. But Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum is such a it's a truly dynamic trio. But what really excites me about this team is the depth, the pieces, how it's coached, how it's run, and how those pieces come together. Herb Jones is, in my opinion, one of the 10 best defenders in the NBA already, and he's just going into his second year. I think Dyson Daniels has the potential. I know he didn't play much on opening night. I think he has the potential to be, if he played a little bit more, I think he has the potential to be first team all rookie. I think he's already one of the better defenders in the NBA. Jose Alvarado is one of the better backup point guards in the NBA. I think this is just a team that is an embarrassment of riches. They are deep, they are talented as hell, and they are young, and they have a lot to prove. And I think that CJ McCollum is just such a steadying force for that team. I don't know how other teams are going to guard this team, but in my opinion, the New Orleans Pelicans are by far the most criminally underrated team that I can think of in recent memory. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this video. Is there a team that I maybe am ranking as underrated that you think is overrated? Am I off my rocker? I think, I alluded to the Boston Celtics in a previous video being underrated, and a lot of people had an issue with that. Is there a team that I'm just completely missing? In this video, I've named 10 teams. Is there a team that you think I haven't named that is underrated? Let me know. I am always surprised just how many comments these videos get. There's so many basketball channels out there with more subscribers, more views, and yet when I look at the comments on these videos, it's always awesome to see 100, 200 comments. I love the community we're building up here. So excited for 3,000 subscribers. Let's get us to 5,000 subscribers by New Year's. That would be awesome. If you haven't hit subscribe, hit notifications. It really does help the algorithm. Make sure you don't miss the next video. Talk to you next time. Peace.